Novice 2018. Congratulations to all teams. My name is Hannah. I'll be chairing the round. Here with me is Hakimi, Daniel, Deb, as well as Fred. On the motion that you guys have selected, let's have 5 minutes to let the session. Here.
Madam Chair, if I live in Bukit Bintang and I inquire to you where the nearest place of leisure would be other than a mall, where would it be? How fast could you think of an answer, and how far would it be from where I live? So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the problem that we are going to tackle today. The problem for today is that in which side do we equalize development so that economy and optimum living conditions can both coexist, right? So, how could you decide this debate today? This debate today will be decided on which side could prove to you that people will live well instead of just scraping by because we have a developed economy instead of a good place to live. So what is the debate, right? First of all, where does the debate happen? This debate should happen in a place where, in a developing country, where there are lands for you to allocate to either decide between places of leisure or places or commercial places like malls, office building, condos, and so on and so forth. So that is today's debate, right? So first of all, the matrix for today is that inside government, we will show you that in our world, will give you a better standard of living and also a developed economy so people can live and live well. But side opposition in their world, they can only give you a better economy but not a better living condition as a whole. Their development is not wholesome, but it's more focused on one thing. Let's say like you're eating protein and then just throwing away all the carbs in your diet. That is side opposition today. So what am I going to do for you today, right? First of all, I'm going to point out that there is an imbalance in development and what happens with this disparity and why does it matter, right? So first of all, let's say in KL or even in Jakarta, that places of commercial are so concentrated, are so conducive in just one small area, that let's say people live outside of the area, that there is no development for them, that even if there is so little that it is not even seen, right? So first of all, in our world, where we spread the allocation of land between commercial and leisure, that there will be an increase in economy where there will be more places where there will be malls, there will be parks, then you can live comfortably. You can decide if today I want to go shopping or today I want to go jogging at the park or have a date somewhere there, right? So that is what will happen in our world, where side opposition today has to prove to us that no, this is not important. We do not care about leisure. That we just want development. We just want the money. Screw your living conditions. Number two, that there are no places to relax, right? So if you live in a city where you work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, that there is no place for you to relax other than home. There is no place for you to do recreational activities other than the gym. So third of all, what in this world, right? What happens? That we believe that in this world the environment will be worse. Why? When there is conducive development in one single city or one single area, the pollution for, let's say, a factory or a building, or that more people will come through their cars, the pollution in the world of side opposition will be too great to handle, and there will be no checks and balances in their world to control the environment. Number four, that the stress that the people will have living in these conditions will be greater in the world of side opposition. In the world of side opposition, at the end of the day, you can only sit at your home, watch TV, or go to the mall and spend money. You cannot go to a library, you cannot go to a museum, you cannot go to a park. One day when you have a kid, you cannot tell him, oh, this is a museum or this is a zoo. In our world, we will allocate land for them to develop zoos, libraries, museums, parks, for kids and adults alike to find their leisure, to relax and to release their stress, accepted.
In a capitalistic world, why is this the most important thing for people?
So ladies and gentlemen, in a capitalistic world, why is this important for people? Number one, where in a capitalistic world where they work 8 hours a day, when you want to develop a country, right? If you only focus solely on the money aspect of a country, we leave aside so many things behind. We leave aside the well-being of the people in our world, right? And even in our world, we believe that economies can increase. Why? Look at Japan, New York, Paris. Why do tourists go to the place? Because they have a good city to go, they have a good infrastructure, they have good parks, but they also have good development of commercial places. They are balanced, so tourists are more likely to go to these places. So what is our solution in this world? So, and why does it matter that there is an imbalance in development in today's debate? So why does it matter, right? First of all, we believe in a country that is more wholesome, that is not just focused on becoming a developed country, ignoring the fact that a developed country sees both economy and also the well-being of their own people. In the side of opposition, that they believe that we can rush the development of economy, but leaving behind the entire other aspects of what being human is, or how important it is for these leisure places, which my DPM will talk more about on why these leisure places are important. Second of all, we are okay if development takes 40 to 50 years to complete. Why? Number one, Rome was not built in a day. We believe that in our world, we will build a better city, a better country as such as Rome was built. But in their world, if they rush development, they will only get a capitalistic idea of what a developed country is, and they will ignore the aspects of the entire wholesome aspect that you will get in our side of the house. Inside government today, right, we do believe in economic development, but we also believe in emotional development for our people. We believe that if we only focus on economical development, that we will not be a developed country per se. Why? Now, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, to be a developed country, right, if you see the ranking of developed countries in this world, you see the happiness index. Countries such as Finland, most Scandinavian countries, Europe, America, they have high happiness index. Why? Because living in a conducive environment helps them to release their stress, helps them to rethink, and helps them to live their life entirely, in which will make the country better. Why? Because they will not leave this country. I like living in this country. Why should I leave? I have a good life here. So that will increase the work in that specific economy. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I have never ever been this proud to propose. Yeah.
Rome was definitely not built in a day, but understand that their markets and their economic centers was probably built before the Colosseum was built. So it is essential for a developing country, understanding the need for it to develop, that these commercial spaces be prioritized. So, two things in this debate that I will do, and the rebuttals would be integrated for this. Firstly, I will talk about the responsibility of the government to ensure a basic level of happiness, and how this basic level of happiness comes from capital, and comes from money, and comes from economic development. And secondly, I will talk to you about how practically, when we focus on economic growth, it will eventually lead to a world where the standard of living is more long-term, or is more guaranteed. So, first level of argument, which is the responsibility of government. But before that, allow me to respond a bit to what they say. They say that their world guarantees a better standard of living because you have museums and things like this. Firstly, I would contend that it's not necessarily true, because you might have these leisure spaces, but if you do not have the money to pay for the transport, if you do not have the ability to go to these leisure spaces, you can't enjoy these leisure spaces. If you do not have a job to enjoy these leisure spaces, you won't have the opportunity to enjoy these leisure spaces. So it is essential for the government to ensure that you have the ability to enjoy, you have the ability to achieve higher levels of happiness by having a baseline level of capital. So, which will lead on to my first principle, which is what is the responsibility of the government? The responsibility of the government is to protect their people, to ensure that their people have the opportunity and have the cause and forge their path to success. So, by doing this, by actually prioritizing commercial spacing, what they're doing is actually giving them the opportunity to succeed. We need to understand that in developing countries, much of the people are facing hardships in actually living day to day. They do not know what food they're going to eat tomorrow, because all their income is dependent on that. By actually building commercial spaces like malls and office spaces, what we allow here is that, for example, in office spaces, we allow for commercial businesses to take root, and these commercial businesses would hire people and would give job opportunities to the people of the city, or to the people of the country, of this country. And this is essential, because by actually allowing them to go to these places and by actually generating income for these people, they would have an opportunity to enjoy their spaces. They would have the opportunity and the capacity to do it. If they do not have this opportunity, if the government doesn't guarantee the opportunity, all their benefits won't happen. So, how is capital the fundamental level of happiness? Capital buys you food. Capital buys you a shelter. Capital buys you all these important things that guarantees you a fundamental level of happiness. Maslow says you need safety, you need food to guarantee that you feel secure. But if you only have like intellectual pursuit, which what museums museum offers, but you do not have that fundamental level that guarantees you safety and food, you won't have the opportunity to even think about all this stuff. So you'll be concerned with the food, your empty stomach. You'll be concerned with the things that you have, the things that you don't have, and you won't be able to enjoy this kind of things. So we believe that it is therefore the responsibility of the government to prioritize 9 to 1, for example, this kind of things, so that we will ensure that they will even have opportunity to do this. So what is the practical benefits of this? But before that, yes.
Why would anyone be happy even if they can get 3 meals a day, but at the end of the day they just stay at home stressed, rather than in our where they do get 3 meals a day and they also have time for leisure and places to do that?
You need to understand that these places these developing countries have high population, have an urgent need for jobs to be created. When you equally prioritize this, it would necessarily mean that some jobs will be lost. It would necessarily mean that some part of the population would not have the ability to work these jobs. When you guarantee and when you prioritize development of these economic spaces, you are allowing more opportunity to more people within all levels of society to ensure that they have the capacity to guarantee capital. So that is the response, because we want to ensure that all levels of society in a developing country moves up and moves forward. So what is our practical benefits that we do? When we do this, we generate income for the governments, because these office spaces pay taxes. The companies that occupy these office spaces also pay taxes. Malls create taxes in the form of GST, for example, in the form of all these consumer taxes that come in. Investors, foreign investors are more attracted to invest in these countries because these countries have commercial spaces for them to build their factories, for example. So all of these things generate income for the country. So why is this important, and why does this guarantee a better standard of living? When the government has more income for themselves, they can actually use this revenue to invest in public infrastructure, to invest in things that actually matter. Public transport, for example, to ensure that a worker can get from one point to another point safely and securely, and feel that okay, I can get to that point easily, and I can get back home without going through like up and down hills. I have smooth roads and things like this. When the government has the income that they garner from all these commercial businesses, we guarantee that this kind of things happens. In their world, what will happen is they will create and spend money on leisure spaces which will not necessarily be used. They haven't really shown structural reasons why these people would have an incentive to actually use these leisure spaces. When we say that these people, because of the nature of developing countries, because they have an urgent need to actually find a job because they worry about day-to-day living, they will have an incentive to actually work in the spaces that we offer. Rather, in their world, they will just create a leisure happiness and expect that, if you use these spaces, you will have the opportunity to be happy. So even if you don't have a job, you can go to the park and walk around and be hungry and see the leaves and the leaves on the tree and just be happy because of that. We don't say that, and we say that we need to guarantee food in the stomach, and we need to guarantee that they will be able to move forward. Another practical benefit that can be gained from this is that you actually say and tell the people that I have constructive stuff for you. I understand what you really need from the government perspective, because the government needs to ensure that they get re-elected in the future, for example. By actually guaranteeing you that, okay, I'm going to take care of your most urgent need, I'm saying that, okay, this is your problem. I'm not looking in the too much into the future, but I'm understanding your problem now, here and now. For all these reasons, I say side with side government.
Panel, we live in a world where in the quest for achieving capitalistic goals, we have become a cog, or rather a robot in this huge capitalistic machine that has forgotten how to live. But moving on to that, before PM came and told you about the disparity of the imbalance that exists in today's world and why we need some sort of balance when it comes to allocation of land for different purposes, right? And what I'm going to tell you is how this balancing of allocation of land will not only enhance development as my point one, and my point two as how living standards improve, and how thirdly, what are the short term against the long term, more of a what's the ops best case against our best case kind of solution, right? But before that, I have a few rebuttals. They came and told you that yes, Rome was not built today, but also before them, the city was built, the Colosseum was built, you had the markets working on. But we tell you, when the Colosseum was built, you didn't have 10,000 cars jamming out on the road that needed spaces to park, right? And we think that that is a harm that they have on their side that they're not taking care of. Because when you do not plan your cities well, when you keep building these commercial spaces such as malls and condominiums and so on and so forth, which are meant to house so many people, but you do not take care of your city planning in a way that is meant to accommodate them for overall society to benefit from. We tell you that if you are on a road passing by Bangsa or Mid-Valley, there's no way in hell you can avoid the jam that exists nearly 24 hours a day, because the city was not planned well. You have overhead bridges to commercial areas that are not even well used. Look at Icon City around Subang. That area has not even been fully built despite so many exhibitions over there, because people don't want to utilize certain commercial spaces which are not always successes for the country's economies to begin with, right? And now I'll move back to my substantive, where I tell you how this is going to enhance development, which is also what they are proposing on their side, but we'll have living standards benefit from it on our side, right? Because in order to enhance development, this equalization of land allocation would mean that all land is treated equal in the terms of them being utilized at the end of the day. This would mean that land prices in prime areas will drop, because now we are encouraging people to utilize all the land that is possible. So you don't have areas like Seremban where you have lesser malls but you have more recreational areas, but come to KL where you have you can name at least 25 malls in a Klang area, but you cannot name more than 5 parks. Mr. Speaker, please sit down. And what we are telling you that once these land prices will drop, because now there are more lands that we are allocating to people as to where their commercial spaces will be built and where leisure spaces will be built, and we'll be optimizing it for society, because now we will be able to build cities that have correct levels of both in them, therefore also improving the economy of those specific areas, right? And I'm going to tell you why. Because at the end of the day, when you equalize to a certain extent these land prices, this would further optimize or increase the available land for development to begin with. And this would mean that companies that were previously all based in one area will now be spread out in different areas, therefore decreasing competition and improving variety for the people in the country to choose from. Therefore, at the end of the day, not only the companies benefit from the lack of competition, but at the end of the day, all this money goes back into development of the country, which can be used for the public transport that they so talked about, how important it was for people to have mobility in this kind of society. Sit down. Furthermore, we tell you that once we have built these optimum societies with this balance, and how this city planning makes it generally a better city to live in, right? That this city would be ranked upon the UNMDI scale, the multidimensional index that measures the living standards of people, and therefore this would not only boost the local industry but as well as boost tourism, because nobody wants to go and see a goddamn ugly city in which they'll be stuck in traffic for 3 hours of the day, right? They want to go to a place as a tourist where they can go to a mall, yes, fine, but also hang out in the park, right? Please sit down. And then, now I've told you how this enhances the development of these cities, makes them better, and now I'll talk to you about how these living standards in these areas improve, right? Because now that we have better city planning, that would mean that, like I told you, we have balanced areas in which we have malls, we have parks, we have other services that people require, and if we are able to help the economy in the long run, you'll have public transport too, so you'll be able to access these areas as well. And what we are telling you is that if you wake up in the morning in Jakarta, you wake up with a dead-end traffic in the morning, you go to work spending 1.5 hours in the traffic, and get back home after being stuck in the 1.5 hours of jam. We think that this is not an optimum environment for anybody to live in. And if anybody would have to abide by the bare minimum of living standards to survive in a society, we don't think the aim of life is to wake up, earn money, come back home, sleep. We think that you have to make the most of our life, and under our paradigm, we let you explore that potential in your life, right? And then, now, I'm going to talk about why this entirety of both cases, short-term and long-term, and how our long-term benefits outweigh the short-term benefits which they'll have with more harms on their side, right? Because the cost of opposition's economic progress was that they will urge all these commercial spaces to build up so they can boost their economy, so people can get what they need urgently, right? We tell you this is wrong, because in these countries where you suddenly overdevelop for the sake of your economy becoming self-sustained, right? You can't unbuild what you have overbuilt. You can't come to KL and say, now we're going to demolish half the city because we have achieved development, but now we want people to enjoy their living conditions better. You can't go and completely demolish half of Bukit Bintang saying we are going to build a goddamn park over here for Nadzreen to go to in the morning because you all didn't have an answer for him, right? And we think that these are the harms that you have on their side. You can't unbuild what you have overbuilt and overdeveloped. But on our side, because we focus on the allocation of land to enhance development, like I told you in my point 1, and second, how we'll have slightly delayed development because we won't rush into things that we can't unbuild in the future, as well as thirdly, we'll improve living standards, which also in turn improves tourism. We think that there are no tangible harms besides the slight delay in development terms on our side, and therefore please consider the harms that they have on their side, that they won't ever be able to provide a society for the citizens to live well in. Thank you.
panel, I think the biggest flaw that we saw from side government is that they fail to show what the yardstick of a good life is. I think this is extremely important in this debate because consider the fact that we are living in a capitalistic society. We need to understand that monetary gain is what defines happiness in today's world. Because monetary gain is what brings you into social classes, social parties, gatherings, the kinds of friends you make, the kinds of things you do on Facebook or Twitter. I mean, also they need to show us why it's so important to change the structures that give you happiness in the first place. Because they never showed to us how suddenly when you go to a park or when you go to a library and when you go to a museum, suddenly you will get the happiness that you are missing. I think these are important links that were really missing from side opposition case. And I would want to show you why it's extremely important in our case. Two important things. Why it's extremely urgent that we prioritize more development of office spaces or more commercial development as opposed to this. And finally, why it will lead to a better quality of life at the end of the day. Because we need to understand the problems that people go through. It means a lot of money that they have to pay. They need a lot of school fees, they have to pay for the tuition of their kids, they need to afford money for transports. For example, you need to go here and there. There are a lot of things that they need to buy in order to get the kind of happiness they want. These are things that essentially build up happiness in today's world. And that's why we believe it's extremely important that you prioritize, make it extremely urgent that you build these commercial spaces. Because understand that when you take developing countries, not only here, not only Malaysia, if you take countries like Bangladesh, India, and countries like Nepal, it means that these places are lacking structures that essentially have monetary flow within these countries. That's what was literally missing inside opposite government's case. They need to show us why it's extremely important that you make everything equal. Why is it extremely important that you have a park when these people literally don't have enough amount of jobs, maybe underemployment? Because the burden falls on the government. The government has to answer for underemployment. The government has to answer when these people are asking for more tax breaks. The government has to answer when it comes to things like welfare. And all of these things are because they lack a proper, developed, well-structured commercial area. And that's why we believe it's extremely important you prioritize these things. So then the other, I think the contention that a very minor point coming from side government is, look here, the reason we don't want this is because it's not environmental friendly. I think it's simple. If your problem is environmental friendly, there's green structures, there's green architectures, the new concept is green building, the government can impose rules and regulations that the private companies, when they're building them, they can have more green initiatives. Also, the government can impose protectionism if the case is that they won't be able to have better kinds of salary for people. I think these are the important things that to note, that why we need to urgently make sure that this is the most important thing in our debate. Because notice, the population is increasing. I mean, this is something we need to talk about in this debate. Because when you take cities, it includes middle class people, poor people, rich people, people from all walks of life. This means you need to cater to these kinds of people as well. And you know, like if they're talking so much about happiness, where a father with his son goes to the park and enjoy, literally like sometimes when there's lack of office structures, the people have to go other areas to work. Because notice, in our world, we can have two cities and develop them both in terms of economic development. We can have two mega cities if that's what they want. We are okay with that. We don't see why we need to compromise on that. Then the other thing they say is, look here, land prices will drop. We don't see how land prices will drop, because the moment there is less supply of something, that increases the more demand for it. It means at the end of the day, prices will increase because there's now very few companies. But on the flip side, when you have a lot of companies coming and investing in these countries, that's when government can, because the moment you allow for office structures to come in, when you allow for more private space to be utilized for commercial use, that's when other foreign investments will also come in. Because if you take countries like Bangladesh, India as developing countries, the reason why we saw a lot of commercial development in terms of the capital city is because the government allocated like 90% to 10% in terms of commercial development of land. That's why we see at least a huge percentage of their population actually has jobs at the end of the day. If you take countries, say cities like New Delhi, the reason why we see that there's actually some sort of development in terms of values that they have, as also in terms of economic development, why people in New Delhi can actually have some kind of food on their plate at the end of the day, is because the government focused 90 to 10 on ratio in terms of commercial development. These are unique benefits you don't get inside opposition, because we are willing to trade off the kinds of happiness they want to talk about. We tell you happiness does not come in terms of you going to a park or a museum. Happiness is defined, we tell you, we redefine what happiness is, because in a capitalistic world you cannot change the structures of happiness. Happiness is dependent on the money you have, because money is what buys you travel, money is what buys you food, money is what buys you things, and money money is what includes you in social things. You cannot deny it. You cannot say that at the end of the day, you will be able to guarantee that everyone at the end of the day has money if you focus equally on a 50-50 level. That's why we believe it's actually more important to prioritize these things. Yeah, before we move on, sure.
You won't be able to provide jobs for all people under your paradigm either, because if you're going to bring private sector into the question over here, they often outsource cheaper labor from elsewhere. Where do your people's money come from?
If the issue is outsourcing people, government can impose rules and regulations. It's a simple thing. It's a non-contentious thing. If your issue is that you have people from other parts of the world coming in, working a job, fine, have a quota that you want 90% of people, for example, is Malaysian, 90% Malays, it's fine, you can do that. It's in our world, it's not a harm that we are willing to trade off. Finally, what's more important is that look here, we told you that it's another important thing that comes into play in this debate is the idea of, like, you know, they tell you, like, you cannot unbuild something when you build a very mega city, you cannot go back on what you're doing. You're saying it's fine, you don't have to go back. These people have a good standard of living. At least you're able to achieve some in terms of quality of life, something that they can do. They can finally send their children to a better school or better tuition class, better form of education. These people are actually able to do some kinds of leisure activities that they do, because understand, leisure activities does not mean you go to the park. Today's context, 21st century, leisure activities like the kinds of going and hanging out makan with your friends, or going to movies, or hanging out, chilling on, chatting on Facebook, or doing things on crazy things on WhatsApp. These are what define leisure things. And in order for everyone equally to access all these important structures, it's essential that you prioritize building in terms of commercial space, because these can guarantee. In a long-term comparative, we are fine. Even if it takes 5-10 years to build, we are willing to wait that out and take, because it's an equal, the capital you have to invest in both worlds is the same. If it takes 10 years to build on both worlds, we are fine. We are willing to wait 10 years as long as it can guarantee that fine people on all walks of life will be able to benefit in somewhat way. Because if you take middle class people, they are able to actually get employed in these opportunities. If the issue is that a lot of people from below poverty line are going outside to work in terms of median jobs, you find we are able to provide them in this.
A key difference or point of contention here that seems to be coming out of that opposition is that somehow they figure that we are debating in a different world, an ideal, utopian, socialist world. Now here's the point that we're making. We are not denying that the economy is important. We too are living in a capitalist society. The only difference is, you know what's present there that's not present here? Tunnel vision. Tunnel vision is present there. They are looking in the short run while completely disregarding the long run, as conceded to in the PM speech, that they would tell people, look, we know what you need in the short run, but we wouldn't really care about the long run. Now we're telling you the short run benefits that are more than enough countered with harms is not worth the trade-off of all the long-term benefits that characterize a developed country. If they want to continue to be a developing country with the problems of imbalance and developmental disparity that has been expounded on in our PM speech, sorry, that was the other speech, in our PM speech, then they will forever be a developing country with deep-rooted, entrenched flaws and economic disparity rather than a developed country in the future. Now, before I go on further into that, their first argument that came out of the LO speech was that there is an urgency of development. They tried to characterize this debate that somehow the time frame is really, really important. Now, we tell you that we concede that there is urgency in development, but why is that urgency of development also present here? Now, we tell you that we do not want mega cities. We do not want KL so big, but on the other hand, look at Negeri Sembilan. Is there a building more than 10 stories there? No. What we are telling you is we want the same amount, if not more, economic development, but spread out over the whole country, because more often than not, in hyper-capitalistic countries, as conceded by them, land is not fully utilized. There is more than enough time that land is completely disregarded, and property is only focused in these key mega areas, which also comes back to our point that in their paradigm, land prices are going to skyrocket, and in their paradigm, it's going to serve as a disincentive for private sector. It was not sufficiently rebutted, the point that came out of us, to tell you that when there is not the same amount of competition, when development is spread out over the country, that as a reasonable extension of that, land prices will be better. Land prices will be lower, and that lower price is more than enough to counter what possible negligent disincentive that there is to deter the private sector away. So, urgency of development. The other thing that we've already told you is that land is limited. Satya has already came out and told you that you can't unbuild what you've already built. For them to simply say that, oh, we do not need these things in the short run, but we need these things in the long run. And then later, when they found out that, you know what, land is a limited supply, woohoo, big idea, right? When they found that out, what they did is that they came out as like, oh, if you can't build it, just too bad lah. Now, man, you don't need it now. So we do not think that is a solution. That is simply a very, very poor mitigation of a harm that they have just realized on their case. On our side, in the long term, people lead a more balanced life, as expounded on Satya in his debate about living standards. Now, another living standard that they say, their main argument rests upon the contention that money equals happiness. We tell you, we have told you the yardstick that we use, the United Nations Multidimensional Living Index. We thought that they would know what that is, but we apologize that we didn't take the time to explain it to you. What it literally means is that life is judged on more than one dimension, i.e. multidimensional. It takes into account education, it takes into account working hours, it takes into account your whole living life, and not just money. How many times have your mother told you that money is not happiness, that life is more than happiness? Have you all heard it? Apparently they haven't. So, the key here is that GDP does not equal living standard. We argue that multidimensional living index is what tells you the living standard. Now, they came up here and said the example of New Delhi. Why New Delhi is an example of good living standards. Now, our contention is that if you want to propound India as the key landmark of your so-called developing of a developing country, now look at the disparity in India. As many skyscrapers you have, look at the amount of slums you have. Leave out the contention of leisure spaces. Do you have enough a proper balanced development? No. That is what we are tackling here. Something that you refuse to accept. Yes, before.
Build more commercial spaces so these people in the slums can find work and then find a job and to move to your
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. How's that working out for you so far? Is India like, are slums completely gone since their independence? We see skyscrapers, but we still see slums. So what is it that you're trying to prove? It's not working. We're giving you something that's working, but you refuse to accept it. Next, that again, they say that another example, because we feel that we really need to prove that money is not the yardstick of happiness. That look in Japan.